There is a specific threshold of stress where the decision-making process completely stops. This occurs when every possible choice guarantees harm to someone you value, leading to total cognitive paralysis. The Bhagavad Gita examines this failure at its historical extreme. It is set on the ancient battlefield of Kurukshetra, a place defined by the immediate threat of total civil war. These blocks of ancient Devanagari calligraphy contain a rigorous philosophical framework. The text uses a formal structure to deconstruct the exact mechanics of human deadlock, moving beyond the narrative of the war itself. The warrior Arjuna represents the point of failure. He drops his weapons at the start of the battle, not out of fear, but because his duty to uphold justice is in direct conflict with his loyalty to the family members standing in the opposing army. The text identifies this specific ethical blind spot as svajana moha, the delusion of kin. It describes the moment familial attachment overrides objective reasoning, causing a total breakdown in the ability to evaluate right and wrong. Arjuna calculates that by refusing to fight, he prevents the deaths of his kin. However, the text argues that when the cost of peace is the unchecked expansion of injustice, the act of staying neutral effectively subsidizes that harm. Krishna, acting as Arjuna's charioteer, begins a formal diagnosis of the situation. He approaches the warrior's collapse as a failure of logic rather than a lack of courage. The Gita identifies a specific bottleneck in Arjuna's decision-making process. Krishna defines it as idam mama, this is mine. It is the ego's insistence on possessing and directing the situation to suit its own comfort. When the ego dominates the intellect, kama, or personal desire, distorts the parameters of the choice. The mind prioritizes personal peace over universal justice, making objective moral action impossible. The external threat of the army becomes secondary to the internal collapse of objective reasoning. Logic fails because the individual is too personally invested in the specific identities of the participants. The text distinguishes two concepts, svajana, one's kin, and sujana, those who uphold the good. Instinct biases us toward kin, regardless of objective right. The Gita corrects this. A warrior defends the good alone. Kinship is removed from the moral equation. This requires stripping away tribal biases. It demands a move toward a form of justice that evaluates the action, not the actor. The Gita redefines the ancient concept of yajna, or sacrifice. It moves from ritualistic performance toward a practical code of everyday conduct. This conduct is defined as loka kalyan, actions performed specifically for the welfare and cohesion of the world. Energy is directed outward to sustain the system, rather than inward to sustain the self. Actions performed for the community are considered constructive. Conversely, any action motivated solely by self-interest is viewed as a drain on the world's stability. The moral value of an act is determined not by the deed itself, but by its intended beneficiary. The focus shifts from "what am I doing?" to "for whom is this being done?" Arjuna eventually resumes his role in the battle, but his motivation has shifted. He acts as nimitta matram, an instrument of a larger systemic necessity, rather than an individual seeking personal gain. This is the application of nishkama karma, action performed without attachment to the results. It is the final step in resolving decision paralysis. We typically link our actions to outcomes, tying our willingness to act to the hope of a successful result. The Gita severs this link. Because future variables are uncontrollable, tying our motivation to outcomes creates structural instability, disintegrating the ability to do what is necessary. This ancient logic provides a three-step framework for modern choices. Identify your inherent duty, dedicate the work to the greater good, and act with an intellect stripped of ego. The right choice often feels uncomfortable. The Gita suggests that this discomfort is not evidence of a mistake, but the natural result of removing personal desire from the decision-making process. By detaching from the result, we gain the freedom to act. We are liberated to do what is objectively right, regardless of the difficulty of the battlefield.